What's up guys? So back with another video for you, and I know in my previous videos we've mostly spoken about various nutrition topics, so I'm going a little bit off beat today by talking about something which is strength training related. So we're going to be looking at the back squat today, and more specifically we're going to be looking at some common errors associated with the back squat. 3 common errors in fact. So these are mistakes that people make in the setup or the execution that lead to some unnecessary movement or things they don't really want in your back squat. So you might get some upper body rounding associated with it, or you might get some butt wink or some posterior tilt of the pelvis. These are all things that we don't really want to see a great amount of in the back squat. So that's the reason I wanted to put this video together, guys. I wanted to give you some key technical points that you need to focus on to make sure you're doing a good job with your setup and therefore you're getting the most out of the lift. So let's take a look at point number 1, guys. And point number 1 is not making sure that we've got as much upper body tightness as we possibly can. So obviously when we perform a back squat, the bar is going to be resting across our upper back. And what we need to do in that position is make sure that we created a stable platform for the bar to rest. So what happens when people don't do this is that because they can't get in a tight position with their upper body, everything else below it, so when they go to execute the movement, everything else goes to, well, it doesn't go well. So with it being the first point of contact with your body, we need to make sure that we're doing a good job to secure that bar in place so that we're in a good position to perform the movement efficiently. So, how do we do this? Well, obviously in this position, we're going to be speaking about taking a grip which is as close as you possibly can be. A lot of this is going to be down to your own individual shoulder mobility, so you're going to have to spend some time finding out exactly where you need to be on the bar. But in an ideal situation, your hands are going to be as close as they possibly can. I'd probably say with the caveat that your elbows are probably inside your wrists. So for me, I can get into this type of position here. My shoulder mobility isn't particularly good, but it's also not particularly bad. So I can still get into this tight position here. And that's the type of position we're looking to achieve. If you can't because you're really restricted, then you have to go wider with your wrist. But we can still do a good job of digging our elbows down and in, which we'll speak about in a second also, to make sure that you've got that nice stable platform and you're doing a lot of work with your upper body musculature to support that bar and create that shelf. So you can also play around, if you're someone who's really restricted upper body, you can also play around with a thumbless grip. So a thumbless grip would obviously be not including thumbs, or you can play around with actually having your thumb wrapped around the bar. I say if you're really restrictive, I go with a thumbless grip. Like for me, I know I can dig in here with a thumb around the bar also. But play around with those things, guys. But that's massively important that you create that stable shelf for the bar to work off. So as I said, and as you probably saw, that I was digging down and in with my elbows, and I'm also thinking about pulling my elbows forward. So once I've found the width on the bar where I need to be, I'm going to be underneath the bar and I'm going to be actively pulling down with my elbows, and I'm actually going to be pulling forwards as well. That's going to help create a nice stable platform, and it's also going to reinforce the tall chest position as well. Point number 2, guys, is that people don't create as much tightness and tension as they can through their midsection. So some common cues which you might have heard or read about is people tell you to take a big breath of air, or they tell you big chest, which reinforces exactly the same thing. But the problem is that compromises your lower back position, and that's definitely not going to help in relation to achieving a good depth, and it might even possibly be a cause of things like the butt wink and things like that. So I'm going to give you an example of that, or I'm going to show you why. So if I stand to the side, and you can see, if I take a big breath of air like that and I breathe into the top of my lungs and I keep a big chest, what's happened to my lower back? I've created a really pronounced arch. So that's drifted further away from what I would call a neutral position, and I've ended up in that really extended position of my lower back. So once again, big chest, big breath of air, big arch here. That's not going to be ideal for getting a nice depth in your squat. So we need to work in a more neutral position. How do we do this? So, and this isn't an easy thing to do, and it might be a bit alien to you in terms of the concept also, but we need to learn how to breathe through the diaphragm and then attempt to keep the rib cage down. So when we take a big breath, rib cage comes up and everything gets a bit extended in here. So what we need to learn how to do is breathe and create as much tightness as we can, not only through here, but we need to create tightness all the way around to the lower back. But we need to do that in a position where the rib cage stays down. And that's going to help safeguard the lower back and means that you can get the most out of the back squat also. So instead of thinking about chest breathing and a big chest and belly breathing, so just expanding the abs, we need to think about creating a lot of pressure and a lot of tightness, not just through the abs and the front of the body, but we need to get that pressure felt all the way around, and especially through our lower back as well. So we're building like 360 degrees of pressure, and we can do that from proper breathing techniques as well. I'm going to attach a video so you guys can sit there and watch that and hopefully get a little bit more in depth with it, and there's some drills I think in the video that might help you gain a further understanding of how to go about improving that. Standing up isn't necessarily the best position to improve that. You may have to go back a couple of steps in order to learn how to do that more appropriately. Point number 3, guys, last one. And that's sometimes when squatting that people don't move with enough intent and commitment to the movement. So what I like to think about and what I try to tell people to think about is that they need to treat every set and every rep within the set exactly the same. So with the same intent, looking to create the same amount of tightness and tension with each rep, looking to move with the same intent and purpose, regardless of the weight on the bar. So whether that's an empty bar, 40 kilo, 60 kilo, 100 kilo, or max attempts, I want everything to try and look and feel exactly the same. So what tends to happen with people is as the weight gets heavier and heavier, sometimes their movement gets a little slower. So, and what I mean by that is it gets slower on the descent or the eccentric portion of the movement. And what the problem with that is that if they go so slow, it's gonna exert more energy, which is obviously going to compromise your ability to squat the weight back up. So yes, control the descent, but you also want to take advantage of that little stretch reflex you have at the bottom position of a squat, which is obviously going to count in your favour when you speak about coming out of the bottom position, and also when we speak about lifting maximal loads. Ultimately, I'm going to give you this takeaway message: control the descent, or descend as fast as possible as your technique will allow. So all I mean by that is, if you're nose diving into a squat, the chances are is that your technique's going to let you down coming out of that bottom position. So all the tightness and the tension, which we spoke about in points 1 and 2, will probably be lost. So everyone's going to be individual on this. They're going to feel more comfortable and confident with a certain speed of execution versus another. Find one where your technique isn't limited. Find one where you can remain as tight as possible, but you can take advantage of that little stretch reflex, and you can drive with intent and purpose out of the hole. There we have it, guys. 3 key points which I think sometimes people make a few mistakes with in terms of setting up and then executing the squat. As ever, I hope this video has helped. Please feel free to leave us any comments and questions with regard to this video, or maybe some topics you would like to see covered in future videos. I'll attach that link to point number 2 so you guys get an understanding of the diaphragmatic breathing. Until next time, guys, stay strong,